Hi, welcome to How We Met. I'm Sheryl Strich, and every month I interview couples who tell their story about how they met. However, this is our 1-year anniversary of How We Met. So instead of interviewing two couples, we're going to do a montage of all the couples who've been on the air with me this past year. So go ahead, this is going to be a great show. Bernie, what's your story?
Oh, I tell everyone, since I have a bit of a sense of humor, that we met over Kiwi.com, but that was a blind date, and it was a very interesting date because, unfortunately, that was the day that Kennedy was assassinated, and that's the day we actually met.
How did you guys meet?
All right, go ahead, say what you want to say.
We met in a bar.
Stop.
Carol's best friend and my best friend basically tried to set us up. And
Wait. Now, those of you who know UCLA know Ledbetter's.
Wait a minute. Were you at UCLA?
I was at UCLA, and
Okay.
Louis had already finished school, so he was living in Westwood and working.
so I saw this good-looking girl, long blonde hair and really pretty, and I said, I had decided to impress her and ask her out to a Dionne Warwick concert in Orange County the following Saturday, and she accepted. That was going to be our first date. I called her on Wednesday though to confirm.
Had you bought the tickets?
Yes, and I called her on Wednesday to confirm, and now I'll let my wife tell the rest of that story.
Well, I thought he was weird.
Bungalow colony, and then the next thing I know, he threw the doors open, and we saw some
And
very...
they came, and I chose this one and
How,
wiped them off.
were you 15 also?
No. I was almost 19 at the
Oh,
time. Yeah,
oh.
Yeah, an older man.
I was going into my second year of college, so on.
But you were both living in the Bronx at that. Oh, you were in New Jersey.
No, we were both living in the Bronx, but
Okay.
we wanted to see each other. It was only the beginning of the summer, so
Oh,
we had
yeah.
to try to figure out a way. And he figured it out. I'm still trying to remember how he got
I guess
there.
I mooched rides off some of the older guys who worked at the camp to get to see Annette during the summer. We had exchanged address. There was no cell phones, no texting, so everything was done by handwritten letters. Yeah.
But during the summer, he came to get me and we went canoeing on his lake. Let me tell you something. There's nothing romantic about canoeing, watching somebody's back, the first time when you don't really know them and trying to, But
until I gradually ended up in Coos Bay, Oregon, and that's where Bobby and I met.
I had an opportunity to go to Coos Bay and meet Ken Kais in 1991. So that was June of 1991, after all these years. And who do you suppose I met the very first week I was there? And so we come in June of 1991. We're the new guys on the block, and there's all these little cliques. So because we both arrived the same week, we just kind of started hanging out together. And 2 months later, I said, hey, you know something? I think I like you.
Just kind of went around and gave me a chance to talk. And I thought, I wonder if John needs a chance to talk to somebody. And so I called and invited him to dinner. I was a nervous wreck. We ended up in a Chinese restaurant.
Oh, you didn't go to your house for dinner?
No, out a Chinese restaurant, and
so she was allowing me to talk and tell him, how I felt inside. And I screwed up the whole dinner because I cried. I cried all through this dinner.
this one night I said when we were out to dinner, are we dating? And John said, I don't know, but I think maybe we are dating, yeah. And actually what was happening was we were falling in love.
All right, so let's get into it. How did you meet?
We were a fix-up. We had a mutual friend who thought we'd be perfect together. And actually, neither one of us wanted to meet the other one.
Started talking on the phone, and we decided to meet at a midpoint, which we decided was the Reagan Library in Simi Valley. So I get there at the time, and she's not there.
Where were you?
Well, I was stuck in traffic from the Amgen bicycle race. And I was trying to get from Pasadena to the library, and nothing was moving. And he had given me his home number only, not his cell number, so I couldn't call him. And
Here's the cute part. So I'm waiting, and I'm looking. And I had an idea what she looked like, but I hadn't seen her in person. And so what happened? Did I get stood up? And so I'm waiting, and then I go, no, that one's, and finally, then she doesn't know what I look like, and she arrives, and we're kind of like looking around, and and she goes, are you Dennis? I go, you Lynn? And, yay! So we met.
And Linda's mother happened to walk up to me as a lone person and introduce herself, and I said I was looking, and she introduced me to Linda and her friends.
It was not love at first sight, but
nothing special.
special.
We found ourselves working at the same time, oftentimes alone in the temple, and we just got to talking, and that was the start of a relationship because we just allowed things to slowly move into a relationship.
We became good friends first.
Yeah.
Was there a first date?
Oh, yes. I don't know after how long it was, and he said, could I ask you out for a date? And I said, try it. And he did, and
it
we
worked.
did.
And Greg?
I'm from Bensonhurst, Brooklyn,
Yay,
United
Brooklyn.
States of Brooklyn. As the saying goes, you can take the boy out of Brooklyn, but you can't take the Brooklyn out of the boy.
There, but I always had goodies on my tabaret, and so he took some of the candy
Took
and
a red
left
lollipop.
a red
He took her
lollipop
candy?
and left me a note. I owe you one red lollipop. The other man said to me, Roseanne, Greg would like to speak to you. So I went on the phone, and I said to him, you owe me one red lollipop, I gather. And he said, yes, that or dinner. And that started it.
I lived in Brooklyn, went out to Long Island. I was working in New York at the time. But anyway, we went to this seafood restaurant in Lindenhurst, Long Island. And we sat down and we started talking, and the first course came, and we kept talking, and the first course left. We started talking some more. The second course came and left. We had dessert, came and left. We didn't eat, I don't think we ate 2 bites out of anything, okay? And we just kept talking, but it was like visiting an old friend that you knew either in a prior life or from before.
And I was standing outside my classroom in June, as school was about to end, and I saw this girl then walking down the hall, and I said, my goodness, she certainly looks interesting. And we said hello. I'm sure we said hello. We were at a conference, all right, and we were sitting on the school bus. I was sitting in the back reading a story, and she was in the front. And I sat back there partly reading and partly thinking, could I work up the courage to ask her out for pizza? I mean, this wasn't a date. We were just going to go for pizza. So I said yes. And I walked up and said, would you like to go for pizza? And she said yes. And off we went. And the school board referred to us as the couple keeping house together.
And then one evening, my brother and his wife were going to take me out for a dinner, but I didn't have a date. So they were trying to find a date for me. And what happened then? You can take over.
Yeah. They called me, and I was actually cutting some stained glass at the time. I had this big job that I was offered, and cutting stained glass, and they said, would you mind meeting us? We'd like to round out the table. And I thought, really? And they said, yeah, so just meet us at Tony Roma's, you know, and I said, no,
I love
you know,
Tony Roma's.
I did too. And I thought, oh no, and before I could say no, his sister-in-law hung up on me, and I thought, you know, one of the things that his sister-in-law had told me was, you know, he speaks pretty good English, and if you talk really slowly, he'll understand almost everything you say. And I thought, oh, how fun. Can't wait. So I went in and made a complete idiot out of myself.
You were speaking very slowly.
I was. He was sitting on a bar stool, and nice looking fella, and I walked up and I said, hi, my name is Monica. You know, one of the things that his sister-in-law had told me was, you know, he speaks pretty good English, and if you talk really slowly, he'll understand almost everything you say. And I thought, oh, how fun. Can't wait. So I went in and made a complete idiot out of myself.
You were speaking very slowly.
I was. He was sitting on a bar stool, and nice looking fella, and I walked up and I said, hi, my name is Monica.
So then the second date.
How soon after the first date?
A week.
Oh, okay.
He didn't waste any time.
No, how soon did you call her?
Why?
3 days.
Okay, that was good. That
And I
works.
said yes. I said sure.
She kept saying yes all the time.
Every time he asked me, I said yes, yes. And then on my wedding day, our wedding day, I was 53 years old, and it was my first marriage. And I had dated a lot of great men, but they weren't the right ones. And so I wasn't going to compromise. And if it meant I was single the rest of my life, I was single. But when I met Carmen, I knew he was the one. And so when he asked me to marry him, I said yes. And it was worth the wait.
Yeah, and I still have my married name.
But I married well because...
I guess so.
because he does all the cooking. I don't cook.
Oh.
And then I ended up dancing with him, and the rest is history. 9 months later, he said, so now you're my girl? And I said, no, you haven't asked me yet. So there on the bridge, he sort of proposed.
How did he do it?
He just said, you know, now you're my girl. And I said, no, you haven't asked me. So we, you know. And that was the night that you kissed me for the first time. 9 months.
It took you 9 months to kiss you?
9 months.
Chris.
So I got such a shock. We were standing in the elevator door.
But he said he couldn't give me too much time. He's meeting somebody, or somebody's coming to meet him, and I thought, there's somebody must be important to him. So we did our thing, and then the somebody arrived, a very charming, dynamic young lady. I still remember she made a marked impression on me. I still remember the outfit that she was wearing. That counted more than welcoming us back, that Uncle Sam's getting married. So Yvette and Sam married, and Yvette and Ruth became great friends. And the four of us did all sorts of things together, particularly musical. When she finished, she said, Yvette, that's a wonderful friend. When I die, you two should get married.
Oh my goodness. Did you sit near each other in elementary school?
He's glossing over the whole thing.
That's true.
That's the meet cute of this whole story. Is in any of you that went to Catholic school know they sit you alphabetically. So in first grade, my last name was Boyer, and his name obviously was Costello. So Jeannie Boyer was sitting in front of Jim Costello. And Jeannie Boyer would always forget pencils, erasers, anything. And the cute little boy sitting behind her would always magically have one and produce it exactly when I needed it. And so that's how we met. It's just, we sat together in school.
The summer before our senior year, a friend of mine, Greg, reached out and said, we're going to go play tennis with Jeannie. And I said, is this a setup? I mean, he said, no, I want to date Marie, her friend. So I just, I need you to be essentially
My wingman.
His wingman. So that summer before, we would play summer tennis, quite a bit. And she looked pretty cute. And, I always thought she was super cute. I didn't date anybody at all. So come senior year, homecoming was such a huge thing, and dance. And so worked up the courage and asked her out.
And did she go?
Oh, yeah.
Well, the way he asked me was adorable too, because you would send flowers, you would send carnations, $1 for each, with $1 for each carnation or 50 cents, something like that. And he sent me enough carnations that he put one word on each of the little notes on each of the carnations, and I have the notes. Would you go to homecoming with me? It must have cost him, I don't know, $8 or something to ask me
when you're
out.
making $2 an hour.
Exactly. It was a big investment that could have gone horribly wrong.
Okay, so let's get into it. How did you meet?
Okay, so in a bar.
You met in a bar?
We met in a bar. College hangout between, it was in Brooklyn.
Excuse me, oh, what college?
So it was in between two colleges, and neither one of us went to either one of those colleges. He was there with his friends, and I reluctantly, very reluctantly wound up going. So there I was, and she's fighting with me. I said, look, I don't like the meat rack thing. I really don't want to do this. I don't want to go. I hate being, the up and down. You get the up and down. Everybody's looking at you. I said, no, not for me. She said, you have to go. I said, okay, but here's the deal. I'm not doing my hair. I'm not putting on a stitch of makeup. And my sister just came back from Mexico on her honeymoon, and there were these huge Mexican sweaters where I could just hide myself all inside that sweater.
So I think it was a Monday night, and two of my friends and I were looking for something to do, and we knew this place occasionally had live music and our age. So we went there. One of my friends recognizes her friend. He knows her friend's sister. So that was the introduction.
All right, let's get to it. How'd you meet, Penn State?
Well, we have a very differing of opinions of how we met. And Bert's sister was my RA.
Oh.
So where the difference is...
Well, his sister was my RA. I saw him picking her up to go home, I think for the holidays, through the window, and I thought, he's really good looking. I might like to get to meet him. But
back in those days, men were not allowed in the women dormitories after a certain hour. So there was this party going on. And where the difference is, she pulled me through a window so I could get on the floor. But she says, no, she didn't.
You pulled Bert through?
I did not.
Yes, she did.
I went to push open the door to let him in, and I was laughing so hard I fell into the door, and I actually chipped my tooth. So I say he came in through the door. He said he came in through the window.
Why were you coming into the dorm?
For the party.
For the party.
But if men weren't allowed?
Well, we broke the rules.
Sometimes you do things a little different.
Especially when his sister was the RA 2 doors down, right? Okay.
But different ends of town. So I was out one night with my friends, and we went to a bar, and he was there. And that's pretty simple, right? So we met that night. We had a drink, hung out, got to know each other. Common friends that we realized he's the same age as my brother. They played some sports together over the years. So yeah, and then that night we left there. We went to a house party.
You left together?
Yeah, a bunch of us went. A whole bunch of us were out. I was out with my girlfriends. And
we jumped in the same car and she sat on my lap.
Yeah, and we all went to a house party. And it went very late that night at the party. And then he walked me home. And on the way home, it was so late that the breakfast place was open. So we had breakfast together. And then that was it. 2 days later, I got the phone call. We went on a date, and we've been together ever since. Yeah.
You know what the thing that it was when we were sitting talking at the party, we had so much in common.
Yeah.
I said to her, what's your birthday? August 26th. Mine's May 26th. She said to me, how many children are in your family? I said, I'm the youngest of 5. She said, I'm the youngest of 5. And then we just
A million similarities.
Similarities,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was.
We met, we were starting a junior year abroad program.
You were.
We both were.
Oh, you both were?
Yeah.
We were.
And he was in college in Tennessee, and I was in Pennsylvania. And we met in the New York Harbor.
What college were you
I
at?
actually saw Elaine the night before. They got all of the students that were on the program together at, I think, the Mayflower Hotel in New York. And I saw her, but we never were able to get together that night. So the next day we got on the boat, and as we're leaving the harbor, the boat lurched. My stateroom was next door to her stateroom, and honestly, I fell into her stateroom.
He did. And I was 20 years old and trying to figure, I'd never been on a cruise before.
Right.
And I didn't know what you're supposed to wear to lunch. So I was standing there in my slip, and he fell in my room. And he said, "Hi, I'm his nickname, Buddy McClellan. You want to go to lunch?" What?
Lived in a small community in Baltimore, northwest Baltimore, and it was a neighborhood that was heavily wooded, so you never saw your neighbors. And the first winter that we were there were only 8 families, and we had horrible snows, and we all kind of bonded. And Stuart lived down the hill.
Marty has always lived up the hill.
Yes, and he was down. And we met in that neighborhood with different spouses.
Oh, with different spouses?
Yes.
One year I'm meeting with mutual friends, and they say, "You should know that Marty is divorced." And I said, "No."
And he had been divorced at this point.
I had to practically beg for a phone number.
But one Saturday night, I'm sitting at home by myself and saying, "Okay, God, why am I sitting here by myself?" And I didn't want to go to bars to pick up men, and I traveled a lot. I was in hotels. So long story short, I wrote about 6 pages of, "Okay, God, if there's somebody out there for me, this is what I'm looking for."
2 years later.
2 years later, Stuart came into
The phone
my life.
rings.
The phone rings.
A little bit later, the principal called me into the office. It was a Wednesday, I remember this. And he asked me if I would be willing to take a student teacher. And I said, I really don't think it would be a good idea because it's my first year teaching. And he said, "Well, you had Jane. She's the best. You'll be fine. Plus, the university is putting pressure on me to place these students." So I said, "Well, for you, I would, because I really like the principal."
What were you teaching?
I was a special ed teacher.
Okay.
And he says, "Who knows? You might have this pretty young gal fall in love, get married, and live happily ever after."
So when it came time for me to need a supervising teacher for special ed that same year, first of all, our last name is Japanese,
Yes.
and it's got the TS, and people look at that and have a lot of trouble pronouncing Suboda. So they were mangling it. I had no idea how to say his last name. So I show up to the meeting, the orientation, where you meet your supervising teacher, and I said, "Oh, is Mr. Swoboda, is he here now?" And there was a lady and a gentleman sitting at, a very young gentleman sitting at a table. And they look at each other and they go, "Yeah, he's here somewhere." And I go in and they do everything. Well, then when I get matched up with Mr. Suboda, it was him. They had kind of teased me a little bit.
And so while this is happening, the other teachers are kicking me under the table.
And an investor in my company had done business with Andy's company.
And what was your company?
It was a marketing consulting company involving self-insurance.
Okay.
But that's what, and this was a client of mine.
Okay.
And it was the last night of a conference in San Diego.
Okay.
So he introduced us. So we just sat and talked. And then he had to leave to go to a meeting in LA the next day. So
that was it?
That was it.
Well, this was very geographically undesirable.
Did you get Gail's phone number?
Oh, yeah. I mean, she made a big impression. But in my mind, what are you going to do with this?
Right.
I mean, she lives there, I live here.
Right.
And I don't go back there all that often.
Right.
And so a lot of airline tickets.
Well, when did you call? When was the next time you called her?
Well, this was very strategic. yeah, it was like you're trying to figure this out. You're not going to do it in 2 days, 3 days. And plus, you had to sort of mull this over as to what did this mean.
Right.
And I couldn't get her out of my head.
Right.
And I had dated a lot. I was single at the time. I had been previously married. So we just really sort of meshed. But what do you do with this? And so I called her about 3 weeks later.
Gail, did you expect him to call you?
I didn't know if he would, but he had given me his business card, and I gave it to my receptionist, who scotch taped it to her lamp. And I told her, if this person ever calls, patch the call in to wherever I am.
Okay.
Because I had a car phone then.
Okay.
And it was like, I want to talk to this person.
And how did you meet?
Well, I came here not knowing anyone. So I put an ad on nextdoor.com looking to make girlfriends.
Okay.
To go out to dinner with and travel and have friendships.
Right.
And I actually had a huge party on my lawn, and 17 women replied. Well, I was looking for girlfriends, and this guy responded to my email and my post on nextdoor.com. And I completely ignored it.
And okay, so then what happened?
Well, one of the women, her name is Meryl, she's a good friend of mine now who attended that party. I kept telling her, God, this guy keeps emailing me and responding to this Nextdoor ad. And she goes, oh, just go out. Well, he wants to take me for coffee. Just go for coffee. And I was like, all right, whatever. So I wrote him back and I said yes. And we started to chat, email, and then on the phone. And he said, well, you're from New York. You probably are, used to sophisticated eating. What do you like to eat? And I said,
This is before coffee?
It never happened, the coffee. It went straight to eating.
Okay, we had a mutual friend who was a fencer, which is something my wife does.
What is it, John?
Yes, fencing. And I was in a play at East Los Angeles, and this girl, who's her friend, lived in the apartment across from me, and she was in the play. She was a townsperson, okay. And I was the lead. The play was the play that everybody does, Our Town, yeah. And we met, and she told me, hey, I have the girl for you. And she said the same thing to her, and she introduced us, and the rest is history.
We would wake up in the night and talk, like most young women do, and I would tell her something, and she would say, my friend John thinks just exactly like that. You guys could be soulmates. And she kept saying that over and over again for about 6 months. And then one night she woke up and she said, this is it. I'm taking you to meet him.
Okay. All right, now we can get started.
All right. Okay.
How did you meet?
We have different stories about that.
Oh, okay.
But you tell your story.
Okay.
I think it's more
Well, we can hear both stories. We have time.
Well, he thinks that it was some enchanted evening when he was playing piano for a show.
Okay.
And it was not. He was in the dark. I saw there was a piano player and people were using karaoke tracks, and I thought, why?
Okay, excuse me. Mark, tell your version right now.
All right. I thought she had met me when I was playing the piano for the show and was in the dark, and I thought she saw me and said, he looks interesting.
He was in the dark.
But
I didn't see him.
We were both performing with Sunshine.
Okay. And I thought, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? What's going on here? In the Globe, I saw the Sunshine Performance Group, so I called, and she said to come in and audition. And Mark was the piano player, and what song, what key, he could do anything. And so I started to perform with the group, and we just kind of got to know